Recent changes to Canada's immigration policy will significantly affect international students who wish to study college or university in Canada.
We're going to go live right now to the Minister of Immigration and Refugees, Mark Miller, is speaking to reporters. Let's listen in.
So we can ensure international students are set up for success in Canada.
These changes affect immigration, work visa eligibility, college and university services, and much more.
International student fees are already way too high.
And there's a risk they could get even higher for international students.
In this video, I will discuss the three biggest changes that will affect those students who wish to study university and college in Canada.
Enough is enough.
With the last and most recent change being the most significant. Welcome to Humanitas Academia, where I examine various aspects of university and college education around the world. If educational content such as this is interesting or helpful, please like and subscribe for more, and please comment any questions or feedback. First, news stories broke in the summer of 2023 that some international students in Canada may be deported due to fraudulent aspects of their student visa applications.
Balbir Singh's dream was clear: move to Canada, earn an education, and build a better life.
In other words, some individuals had lied to the government about being accepted to Canadian post-secondary in order to get a student visa. While the total number of students who participated in this fraudulent application scheme was found to be small, it demonstrated a significant hole in the Canadian immigration system. Therefore, it was announced that post-secondary institutions would now be required to confirm every applicant's acceptance directly with Canada's Immigration Department. This means that hundreds of thousands of student applications will now have to be processed by this department to ensure that applications are legitimate. Furthermore, the government announced a new Recognized Institution Framework, which sets higher standards for student services, support, and outcomes for international students. In other words, universities and colleges which provide better services and support for international students, for example by having access to affordable housing, will benefit from preferential treatment by the Immigration Department. This means that student visas may be processed faster for institutions who meet the criteria. Thus, students may wish to target their applications to specific institutions that adhere to this framework. Second, in December 2023, the government announced significant changes that will affect the finances of international students. Beginning in January 2024, international students are now required to show that they have over $20,000 in their study permit application as a cost of living financial requirement. Previously, students had to demonstrate that they had $10,000 in their cost of living requirement for study permit applications. This value has been set since the early 2000s, and considering costs in Canada have significantly increased since that time, it makes sense that the government would eventually increase this value. To be clear, this is not money that the government is taking from students. Students must demonstrate that they have 20,000 CAD in order to find housing and to pay for the cost of living in Canada. They are not required to give this money to the government. The government also announced that international students would no longer be able to work full-time during their studies, and would instead be limited to 20 hours per week. This 20-hour per week limit was the norm before the pandemic. However, due to labor shortages during the pandemic, this limit was removed. This change was always intended as a temporary measure. However, it was set to expire in December 2023. Recently, this 40-hour limit was extended to April 2024, but after this, expect the 20-hour limit to return. Finally, in January 2024, government announced that there would be an intake cap on international student permit applications for a period of 2 years,
reducing the number of international students who are issued permits to study in Canada.
For 2024, this means that there will be a limit of approximately 360,000 international student study permits, or a decrease of 35% from 2023. This will result in about 200,000 less international students in the country in 1 year alone. While this limit is very significant, the government also announced that certain private colleges would no longer be able to offer a postgraduate work permit. This means that if an international student goes to one of these schools, they will no longer be able to work in Canada after they graduate. This is because there has been significant growth in the private college sector, and many of these schools do not offer education that is of sufficient quality. The first and most direct result of these changes is that these private colleges will face more scrutiny, and they will no longer be able to offer a post-graduation work permit. This will significantly lessen the appeal of these schools. While the limit on international student permit applications has certainly made headlines, I believe that it is the changes to the post-graduation work permit that deserves the most attention. There's a direct link in Canada between education, access to the labor force through the postgraduate work permit system, and permanent immigration. This is by design historically, but nevertheless, there has been significant concern that the large influx of international students into the Canadian immigration pipeline has exacerbated various cost of living issues in Canada, including housing. Canada, similar to many other countries, is currently facing a significant housing shortage. Furthermore, there has been concern that international students are being exploited by private colleges and are being delivered a subpar education, which does not allow them to adequately integrate into the labor market to recoup some of the costs of their education, which further burdens various social support systems in the country, including healthcare. By removing the postgraduate work program from private colleges, I believe the government is simultaneously trying to address some of these social issues in terms of immigration and housing and healthcare, while also pushing students away from private colleges and into the public sector and to specific programs. For example, professional programs like medicine and graduate school. As Alex Usher from Higher Education Strategy Associates states, each province will be allocated a total number of visas proportionate to their share of the international student population, which means it will affect different provinces in different ways. The biggest hit, and perhaps the biggest private college sector, is Ontario, and specifically colleges in and around Toronto. This area is a hotbed for housing and affordability problems as well as healthcare shortages. There's also a great deal of politics going on, as these changes put significant pressure on governments to fund their public institutions better and to support students more. But it also makes some institutions more desirable as they still offer work permits. Overall, these changes are going to make a significant difference in the landscape of Canadian higher education, not only for international students, but for governments, policymakers, and much more. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned. There's going to be a great deal more to cover on this topic in the future.